I put the keys down like I was dropping a dead mouse on the counter. Quiet, deliberate, the kind of silence that fills a room more than any slammed door ever could. Elise didn't even look up at first, just stood by the wine rack in her overpriced silk robe, twirling a stemless Malbec like it was an accessory. "Go on, walk out," she said, not even a flicker of doubt in her voice. "You won't last a week without me." Her smirk was surgical, designed to cut just deep enough. I didn't respond, just zipped up the duffel I'd packed at 6:17 that morning while she was still sleeping off whatever red she'd opened at 1 a.m. The bag was under the bed, next to the one she didn't know I'd opened a year ago when I started prepping for this exact moment. I walked past the art I picked, the plants I kept alive, the kitchen tiles I regrouted because the guy her dad hired screwed it up, and I didn't want to hear her sigh every time she walked in. I paused only once, at the hallway niche where the bronze sculpture her boss gave her last Christmas still sat. She hated it, but it was expensive, so of course it stayed. That's Elise in a sentence. Keep what you can leverage, discard what you can't post. If this moment grips you even half as hard as it gripped me walking out that door, subscribe. Most don't, and it helps more than you know. The front door clicked shut behind me like a sentence with no punctuation, just final. I didn't slam it. That would have given her too much satisfaction. Made it look like she broke me. She hadn't, not really. She'd just poked a sleeping animal one too many times. I didn't go far, just 6 blocks away, to a condo I'd leased under my LLC. She never bothered reading my paperwork, just skimmed for dollar signs. She once laughed that my little consulting gigs were a tax write-off hobby. In her head, I was the guy in the background, content with crossword puzzles and homemade espresso, the man who played house. Meanwhile, she played heiress. That night, she threw a dinner party, 10 people, catered by a pop-up chef she found through a podcast. Instagram photos went up around 8:43 p.m. I know because I saw them, tagged by her assistant. Elise holding court in that black backless jumpsuit she only wore when she wanted to remind the room who the star is. In one shot, she's leaning back, laughing, glass in hand. The caption, "Unburdened." She thought it was funny. Empowering. I know Elise well enough to know how her voice would have lifted on that word like she was floating. What she didn't know was that I'd already made 3 quiet moves earlier that week. Calls, signatures, one notarized document sent via encrypted courier. By the time her guests toasted her freedom, the floor beneath her had already started to shift. But here's the thing. She always thought I was too passive to bite, that I'd cling to the crumbs of her attention like a man who didn't know how to feed himself. She mistook stillness for weakness. That's her fatal flaw. Elise is sharp in the room, but blind in the mirror. She believes her wealth is a weapon. What she doesn't know is how many of those weapons were secretly mine, registered in names she never thought to check. The night air outside that house felt quiet. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt anymore. I was something else entirely. Free, not in the sentimental way, not in the Hallmark sense. I mean tactically free. Detached, no more rehearsing arguments in my head. No more deciphering her half compliments. No more dinner parties where I'm introduced as, "This is Aaron, he's in consulting or something, he keeps the espresso machine working." She's always believed she was the empire. But every empire has someone behind the curtain, someone who knows where the wires are buried, and sometimes, when the curtain drops, so does everything else. Elise smiled that night. She held court, she made jokes, but I know her. I know how she looked around that empty bed once the guests were gone and the laughter faded. I know she reached out toward the other side, half asleep, forgetting, and I know she lay there blinking at the ceiling, wondering, why the hell did he leave so easily? That's the problem with games. If you're not careful, you forget when the other person stopped playing. I remember the first time Elise said it in public, at a fundraiser in the East Garden of some museum she barely liked. She was holding a flute of something sparkling and dry, standing in a circle of half-bored men in $250,000 suits. And then, in front of all of them, she laughed. "Oh, Aaron, he doesn't really work. He just plays with spreadsheets and drinks my coffee." They all laughed. I didn't. I just smiled like I always did, the kind of smile people mistake for humility, but inside something rearranged itself. I never corrected her, not that night or the dozen other times she made similar remarks. At first, I told myself it didn't matter, that I wasn't in it for the titles or applause, but resentment is like rust, quiet, steady, and absolutely inevitable. She never knew how much I handled. That was the point. When her father's holding company wanted to close a quick acquisition deal in early 20, some half-baked logistics startup with a flashy founder and zero cash flow, I was the one who noticed the mismatch in their vendor invoices. I stayed up until 3 a.m. scrubbing their numbers, drafting a backdoor analysis, and quietly inserted a guarantee to stabilize the deal. No one thanked me. Elise didn't even know. Her father assumed his real lawyer caught it. That lawyer billed $800 an hour and missed it completely. I added my name to the documents in microscopic legalese through a shell LLC I set up using a P.O. box in a town Elise couldn't find on a map. I wasn't listed as a principal or director, just a shadow signature, conditional, revocable, and with teeth. That became the blueprint. Over the next 4 years, I signed on to 8 bridge loans, revised 5 vendor contracts, and bailed out a quietly disastrous import situation in Thailand that would have put their family's reputation through a wood chipper. Elise's father knew about some of it. Her brother suspected even less. Elise, she was too busy giving interviews about female leadership in male-dominated boardrooms. And sure, she earned a lot of that. I'm not here to take that away from her. But you know what she never earned? The right to belittle me with that smirk. Because while she was giving speeches about innovation, I was cleaning up the rot in her infrastructure. I embedded a clause quietly in every single document I touched. A line so dry and innocuous most lawyers never flagged it. Contingent on domestic unity between signing parties, subject to revocation upon material change in living arrangements. Legalese for if I'm out, the whole thing is up for review, not an immediate detonation, but a slow-motion tripwire. One step out of bounds, and the banks would start asking questions. That clause wouldn't ring alarms until someone tried to refinance or move money between subsidiaries. That's the thing about wealth. It only works if the gears keep turning. So I built a gear they didn't know existed, and when I stopped turning it, everything else would wobble. I remember when her father's export subsidiary got flagged for compliance issues in Panama. The company accountant panicked. The lawyers froze. Elise's father called her in the middle of a board meeting and yelled so loud I could hear his voice crack through the phone. Elise walked into the kitchen, holding the phone out, saying, "My dad wants to know if you can look at something quickly." I looked. I fixed it, quietly, efficiently. And then I wrote a side memo about it, logged it under my records, added another clause, always with the clause. She thought I was just playing with spreadsheets. She didn't see the network. By year 3, I'd quietly been issued 3 consulting retainers under different arms of their family trust. Elise signed off on 2 of them without realizing, rubber-stamped in the middle of a monthly report she didn't read. To her, I was background noise, something comfortable, predictable. But background noise is still electricity. You only notice it when it stops. The night I left, the current stopped. And while she laughed over champagne, her world had already begun its recalibration, one clause at a time. Precision, not rage. That's what makes it surgical. She expected tantrums. She expected begging. Instead, she got silence. And in that silence, every line I ever wrote started glowing red. The next morning, Elise woke up alone in a bed that looked like it belonged in a hotel brochure. Crisp sheets, symmetrical pillows, no evidence of life. Just aesthetics. She stretched like a cat, glanced at the untouched side of the bed, and didn't flinch. If anything, it pleased her. By 7:10 a.m., her phone was already buzzing. Texts poured in like glitter confetti. "Congrats on your freedom, Queen. Champagne and clean slates. Finally, you look radiant." She opened Instagram and smiled. One of her friends had tagged her in a boomerang. Elise mid-laugh, champagne glass raised, chandelier lights catching the gold in her earrings. The caption? Unburdened with 2 clapping hands and 1 winking face. The likes had cracked 400. In the comment thread, someone asked if she was throwing a liberation brunch. Elise liked the idea. She texted her assistant to pencil it for Sunday. Mimosa Towers, a string quartet, maybe even those dumb freedom balloons in rose gold. At 9:45 a.m., she stepped into her office like a queen returning from exile. The team was already in motion. She liked that. Momentum meant control. Her boss, a man who once asked her if she could tone down the Prada, actually clapped her on the back. "Let's get lunch this week," he said. "No more distractions at home, right?" She gave a knowing smile. "Right, it's a new chapter." By noon, she was breezing through vendor reports and making a list of edits for the pitch deck they'd be presenting Friday. If Erin crossed her mind at all, it was in the way you think about a sofa you finally donated. Useful once, but now taking up psychic space. Then, at 1:12 p.m., her phone rang. "Dad," she said with mock exasperation, tapping her Bluetooth as she scribbled a note. "What's up?" "Elise," he said, his voice sharp, clipped, not his usual performance growl. "Why did the bank freeze our overdraft account?" She blinked. "What?" "The holding company overdraft account, the one tied to ops in the asset pool. It's not functioning. I just got a call from Paul. He said a payment bounced." A payment bounced. What the hell did Erin touch? She sighed, pushing her chair back. "Dad, I have no idea. It's probably just a system thing, end of month processing or whatever. I'll check with compliance." There was a long pause. "Elise," he said quieter this time, "you do understand that Erin was the counterparty on several guarantees." She froze for a second, halfway through reaching for her pen. What are you even talking about? Erin doesn't own anything. He was just helping. That helping held up $5 million in bridge notes. And if he's removed himself from the household structure, she laughed, actually laughed. Removed himself? You're being dramatic. He packed a bag. He'll be back once he realizes what rent costs without me. Another pause. Elise, this isn't about him crashing on someone's couch. The bank's asking for re-verification of all contingent guarantees. If he left, legally left, they're going to start re-rating our risk. This isn't a joke. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She clicked her mouse out of reflex. The spreadsheet in front of her suddenly looked alien. "I'll call them," she muttered. "It's just a hiccup. Chill." But she didn't call them. Not yet. Instead, she sat back and stared at her phone. The group chat with her friends, still lit up with emojis and encouragement. One text even read, "You're glowing. So glad you dumped that man." The irony itched. She reopened her Instagram. The picture was still there. Her, beaming like a celebrity at a gala. Underneath, a new comment had been posted 10 minutes ago. Someone she didn't know. No profile picture. Funny how foundations collapse right after the architect walks away. She stared at it, heart skipping a half beat. Then the screen flickered. Her banking app logged her out. She brushed it off again. Glitch. Happens all the time. Still, for the first time that day, the champagne inside her started to go a little flat. The voicemail came at 7:42 a.m. Elise wasn't awake yet. She liked to sleep in on Thursdays and ease into the day with clarity, as she told her assistant. She played the message while brushing her teeth, barely listening at first. "This is Gregory Marsh, Regional Risk Manager with Hathaway Private. We've noticed several unusual changes in your risk portfolio and would appreciate a brief call at your earliest convenience." She let the message play out, blank-faced in the mirror. Unusual changes sounded like someone else's problem. Probably her dad moving money again without telling her. He did that. Treated her department like a cash drawer. She tossed the phone onto the bed and started selecting between two nearly identical pairs of black stilettos. When she checked her calendar over breakfast, she saw a cancellation. Their trust advisor, who was supposed to come in for their quarterly portfolio meeting, had removed himself from the invite chain. No explanation. Just gone. She rolled her eyes. "Amateurs," she muttered, stabbing at her avocado toast. But the real impact didn't hit until 10:19 a.m., when her father stormed into her office like a landslide in a Brioni suit. "Why am I being told there's no coverage on the collateral?" he barked before the door even shut. She didn't look up from her laptop. "Hi, Dad, I'm good. How are you?" she said flatly. "I just got off the phone with Marsh. He says the revolving facility's backing is in question, that Erin was the contingent counterparty." "Is that true?" Elise blinked. Then she laughed. Honest to God, laughed. "What are you talking about? Erin doesn't have collateral. He makes coffee and edits vendor spreadsheets." Her father's face didn't change. Apparently, he also signed 12 conditional guarantees under 3 separate entities. His name's on the contingency language, Clause 7C in the standard agreement. She stood up. "That's ridiculous. If that were true, I would have known." "You don't read the legal packets," he said. "You sign them while talking to your stylist." "That's not," she started, then stopped. She suddenly couldn't remember if she had read the last set of filings. Had she? Her phone buzzed again. This time it was her assistant. "Incoming. Mr. Dietrich is on his way up. He says it's urgent." Elise frowned.
Dietrich was the CFO of their parent company. He never came up here. Ever. 30 seconds later, he burst in without knocking, pale, sweating through his Oxford. He stopped himself, closed the door behind him. The bank just phoned Hathaway. They've frozen half our credit lines. Your name came up. She stared. What the hell does that mean? It means they're reevaluating risk on anything Aaron touched. And apparently, that's a lot. The room dropped 10 degrees. Elise stepped back like she'd been slapped. No, that can't be right. They're bluffing. This is about Dad's positioning. It's political. Her voice cracked on the last word. Dietrich opened his tablet and flipped it toward her. They've already started procedures. The yacht's flagged, the Aspen property.
The basket on the mezzanine level, that was listed as leverage under the art lending clause. The clause he signed. Her father swore under his breath. Elise's breath started coming short. This is insane. This is actually insane. Then her hand jerked. The glass she'd been holding, untouched since her father arrived, slipped. It hit the edge of the desk and shattered against the tile. No one moved to clean it up. For the first time in Elise's adult life, 3 men were in a room with her, and none of them were looking at her for answers. They were looking at each other. She was just present, a shadow, a liability. And somewhere in the back of her mind, she could still hear Aaron's quiet voice saying, I'm just stepping away from it. Not sabotaging, not fighting, just stepping away. And somehow, that had been worse because now the building was burning, and he had walked out with the matches still in his pocket. The whiteboard in Elise's office had never been touched before. It was decorative, a status prop. But now it was filled with hastily scrawled names, arrows, and red underlines. Names of entities she'd barely thought about. Her assistant had brought in 2 extra chairs. Both were filled with her father's attorneys. The air smelled like stress and takeout coffee. This has to be a mistake, Elise said, arms crossed, trying to stand tall while the ground vanished beneath her. Aaron didn't sign on to anything he doesn't have access. One of the lawyers, a wiry woman with a knack for unpleasant truths, tapped a thick folder. Actually, he did multiple times, through a single-member LLC that we now believe he created the year after you were married. It doesn't appear in any of our usual structures. Elise snapped, That's illegal. It's not, the woman said flatly. You signed over authority, right here. She flipped a page. Elise's own initials stared back at her in smug blue ink. She hadn't read that packet. It was during Fashion Week. She remembered signing it on her phone while being fitted for a jumpsuit that cost more than her old Civic. Why the hell would anyone let him sign collateral clauses? Elise hissed. Her father looked like he'd been aging in dog years over the past 2 days. Because he cleaned up after your mistakes, Elise. Half the deals we floated through Hathaway were salvaged because of Aaron. Your brother's export disaster, fixed. That shortfall in the Saudi acquisition, he bridged it quietly. We leaned on him. You just never noticed. No one told me. No one needed to. You signed the permissions. The second lawyer, bigger, slower, all elbows and long size, flipped to another page. Here's the real problem, the revolving credit clause. Aaron didn't just guarantee it, he included a condition. His participation was contingent on cohabitation and legal marital status. In English, Elise muttered. In English, the man repeated. The second he left your household, everything he underwrote became subject to reevaluation, not default, but re-rating. The bank flagged it instantly. Risk model shifted, which means collateral requirements spike, Elise whispered. The lawyer nodded. She turned to the list on the whiteboard, feeling bile rise in her throat. Yacht. Leverage ratio, 83% Aspen property. Leverage ratio, 92% Basquiat. Cross-held in 2 entities. Flagged as unstable asset Dinnerware Holdings, parent company. Under review for risk dependency. It was like watching dominoes tilt one by one. They had always treated Aaron like background. He was never in the photos, never at the panels, just somewhere off to the side, reliable, quiet, invisible, until now. Her father's voice broke through the silence. We need him to reinstate support, temporarily, just enough to stabilize, then we can refinance the risk elsewhere. He won't, Elise said automatically. You haven't even asked. No, she repeated, quieter. He's not angry.
He's not yelling.
He's just done. Her father turned to the lawyers. Draft a reinstatement agreement, fast track it through our advisors, present it as a temporary bridge. Name the new fund if you have to. We cannot let Hathaway trigger the default clock. The wiry lawyer didn't even look up. The clock's already started. We got a notice from the audit firm this morning. If he doesn't re-engage by Monday at 9 a.m., the assets go under immediate review for liquidation backup. Elise leaned on the table. You mean they'll seize them? They'll initiate Clause 10C, forced restructuring, which in practice means yes. They won't show up with chains, but they'll start maneuvering you out of control. The worst part wasn't the facts. It was the silence afterward. Even the lawyers weren't speaking. Elise had never felt like a background character in her own story before. But now, as pages turned and terms were read aloud like some funeral sermon, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone else had written the ending long before she realized the story had started. There were no exits, no PR spin, no wine-fueled brunches with smug hashtags. Just a date. Monday, 9:15 a.m. The countdown had begun, and the only man who could stop it wasn't answering her calls. Elise called Aaron twice that night, once from her personal cell, once from the landline in her father's study, just in case he'd blocked the first. Both went straight to voicemail. His greeting hadn't changed. Calm, soft-spoken, utterly generic. Hey, it's Aaron. Leave a message and I'll get back to you. She didn't leave one. Pride still held the leash, even as the panic began to chew through the collar. Her father tried him too, though he didn't admit it until later, pacing the patio with a tumbler of scotch and the same disbelief Elise had worn all day. When he came back in, the only thing he said was nothing, not even a decline tone, just nothing. The silence was louder than a slammed door. By mid-morning the next day, Elise was on her fourth espresso and third draft of an email she wasn't sure she'd send. The board was demanding updates. The auditors had requested a full itemization of Aaron's contributions. Her assistant had pulled all the contracts Elise had initialed in the last 3 years, dozens of them, most in her rushed scrawl, half signed during calls, fittings, or makeup touch-ups before events. And then the call came in. Blocked number. Normally she didn't answer those, but she'd stopped trusting her instincts about what was normal. Hello? She answered, cautious. A polite voice on the other end. Elise Windsor? Yes, who's calling? This is Nathan Carmichael, managing partner at Farwell Strategy Group. We've been trying to reach Aaron. We had him slated for an onboarding session this morning. Farwell? What? Who are you? Her tone snapped to sharp. We're a consulting firm, mid-market M&A. We've worked with your father's companies in the past. Aaron was retained under a 6-month clause through Kestrel Group Holdings, his own LLC. He's been embedded with 3 of our client portfolios for strategic oversight. We assumed you were aware. Elise stood up so fast her chair slammed against the bookshelf. He's what? I'm sorry? Carmichael sounded genuinely confused. You weren't copied on the engagement contract? No, I wasn't copied. I didn't even know he had a consulting firm. There was a pause, then a polite cough. Well, he does, and quite an effective one. He's been instrumental in 2 of our ongoing takeovers, specifically with the Walken Ridge assets and the pending acquisition of Rowley Tech. His modeling flagged a valuation gap no one else caught. Elise's stomach twisted. Are you telling me my husband, was doing corporate takeovers behind my back? Not behind anyone's back, Ms. Windsor. All above board, just not with your name on it. A pause. Would you like me to forward the engagement summary? She ended the call without answering, then stared at the phone like it might explode. It did. 5 seconds later, an email popped up with the subject line. Aaron Windsor engagement. Farwell Strategy Group. She opened it. 4 pages. Clear, professional, airtight. Company name, Kestrel Group Holdings LLC. Managing partner, Aaron Windsor. Scope of work, strategic modeling, risk diagnostics, acquisition analysis. Clients, Walken Ridge, Rowley Tech, Norform Labs. Retention, 6 months, renewable. Compensation, high 6 figures. There was even a section with references, not polite favors, heavyweights. Her hands started to shake. The man she'd once joked about to her friends, called her house husband, Mr. Weekend Projects, The guy who made the best French press but couldn't be trusted to pick a decent wine, was neck deep in strategic warfare at a level she hadn't even breached. He didn't play in her world. He'd surpassed it. Silently. And he never once used her name to do it. She sank into the chair, phone slipping to her lap. She scrolled through the engagement doc again, fingers twitching. This wasn't a man who'd stumbled into leverage by accident. This was a man who'd mapped the minefield, handed everyone a blindfold, and waited. Aaron wasn't a ghost in her world. He was a sniper just beyond the fog. Her image of him, the soft-spoken, passive background man, was shattered, not gradually, not symbolically, violently. And now, she realized with a mix of horror and awe, she didn't know him at all. But the banks did, the firms did, and they were listening to him, not her. Elise hadn't driven herself anywhere in weeks, possibly months. Her assistant usually handled that, or a car service. But now she was gripping the steering wheel of her father's matte black Audi like she was chasing down a war criminal. Aaron's address was pulled from an old insurance file. A rented apartment listed under the name Carson Vale Holdings, one of his countless aliases she now realized, all neat and boring enough to avoid scrutiny. He always had a thing for blending in. He could vanish in a crowd by standing perfectly still. The building was nothing like their house. Low-rise, brick, aggressively forgettable, the kind of place someone lives when they don't want to be found or remembered. She pounded on the door with the flat of her hand, furious and wired, and for the first time in years, completely off script. "Aaron," she shouted, "open the door. I know you're in there." No answer. She pounded again. It opened slowly. No chain, no weaponized tension. Just Aaron, standing in jeans and a navy crew neck, holding a coffee mug like it was Sunday morning. "Elise," he said without surprise or warmth, "you look exhausted." Her voice cracked before she meant it to. "Just come back. For a few weeks. We'll renegotiate everything. Rewrite the damn paperwork if we have to. Just pause whatever it is you're doing." He looked at her like a man assessing a burn that used to hurt. "I'm not doing anything." "Oh, cut the crap. The banks, the firms, everyone's acting like you're some kind of financial assassin." "I'm just stepping away from something that didn't work," he said calmly. "That's not sabotage. That's boundaries." "Boundaries?" She stepped forward. "Aaron, you're letting your silence crash our credit lines. My father's company is days from being gutted. You've built this invisible web, and now you're pretending like you don't have scissors in your hand." He blinked slowly. "I'm not pretending. I don't need scissors. The web just needed me to stop holding it up." She opened her purse, pulled out a folder. Cream linen, hand-bound. Only Elise would try to renegotiate a financial agreement like it was an art exhibit. "This is a revised settlement," she said, pushing it toward him. "Better than before. Clean division of assets. You get what you want. The banks stop hovering. It resets everything." He didn't move to take it, just looked down at it like she'd handed him a dead bird. "I already got what I want," he said. "You gave it to me the moment you said you won't last a week." Her expression cracked, only for a second, but it cracked. "That was a joke." "No, that was a confession." She tried again. "We built that life together." He raised an eyebrow. "Did we? Or did I decorate it while you bragged about doing the heavy lifting?" She opened her mouth, then closed it. "You said I wouldn't last without you," he continued, setting the coffee mug down. "But it's been a week. I've slept. I've worked. I've eaten eggs the way I like them. Soft, not runny. And I haven't once been interrupted mid-sentence to explain why my version of success wasn't Instagram-worthy. Aaron, come on. This is childish." "No," he said, and his voice sharpened, just slightly. "Childish was pretending your brand of power didn't come with a leash. I've taken it off, that's all." "You think this is a win?" she snapped. "Watching us collapse?" "I'm not watching," he said. "I'm leaving the room." She shoved the settlement folder against his chest. "Just read it." He looked down. "No." "Why not?" "Because the old me would have read it, and I don't owe that man anything." The words hung between them, heavy and merciless. She stepped back, stunned, then scoffed like she was still clinging to the idea that this could be spun. "You always did love a dramatic exit." Aaron gave her the faintest smile. "Only when the curtain deserves to drop." And with that, he closed the door. Not slammed, just closed. She stood in the hallway, folder still in her hand, realizing, for the first time, that she couldn't buy her way out of this. He didn't need her? Worse than that? He never had. Monday arrived like a blade. Elise walked into the executive suite at 8:56 a.m., 4 minutes early, and still clinging to the illusion that something, anything, could be salvaged with a firm tone and a tailored blazer. She wore navy, structured, subtle shoulder pads, no jewelry, serious, the kind of outfit meant to signal control. Her father was already on the phone, not pacing, shouting, red in the face, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. She hadn't seen him like that since the 2008 crash. "I don't care what your internal protocols say. You told me this note was covered. Now you're calling it back like we're some tech bro startup. This is a legacy operation." Elise froze. Note? What note? He slammed the phone down with the force of a confession, looked at her like she was a stranger who'd just crashed his dinner party. "They're calling the note," she blinked. "Which one?" "The revolving credit facility, all of it. Effective immediately. We owe $47 million in liquidity by end of day." She stared. "That's insane. We have assets." We had coverage," he snapped. "Aaron was the coverage. Now the bank doesn't like the ratios. They've reclassified the risk profile of half our portfolio." She opened her mouth, but he held up a hand. "Don't. Not one word unless it's how you're going to fix this." At that exact moment, her assistant appeared in the doorway, pale. "You need to come downstairs." Elise followed her to the underground garage. The black McLaren was being winched onto a flatbed. Two men in navy polos from the luxury lender's recovery department were snapping photos and taking notes. One of them pointed at the barcode on the windshield. "We've got a seizure order," he said without looking at her. This vehicle was secured under a lien to an LLC now marked inactive, title holder Aaron Windsor. She felt something twist in her chest. That was her car. A birthday gift. Except, no. It had been a gift from Aaron. She just assumed he bought it with her money. Back upstairs, her inbox was a war zone. Subject lines in all caps, capital calls, partner queries, auditor flags. Then came the resignation email from the CFO. 4 lines. Cold. "In light of recent developments and my lack of visibility into critical financial structures, I no longer believe I can fulfill my fiduciary duty." She reread it 3 times before closing her laptop harder than necessary. Her phone buzzed, a notification from the Family Trust Administrator. "RE, suspended activity. Niece's trust fund. We regret to inform you that the trust has been temporarily frozen pending a full review of the contingent guarantor clause. As Mr. Aaron Windsor was listed as an administrative counterparty, his withdrawal has triggered a procedural hold." Elise felt it like a gut punch. Her niece's college fund, the one she'd set up, the one she'd bragged about in interviews as proof of her generational vision, now locked. Her father stormed into the boardroom at noon. The executive team had gathered for emergency triage. Sweat on brows, no catering, just bottled water and tension. She tried to take the lead. "We're stabilizing," she began, voice practiced. "We've initiated a review of all active documents and are in contact with—" "Why didn't you know?" It was Collins, operations lead, mid-40s, 10 years of loyalty, and suddenly frosty. "Excuse me?" Elise blinked. "Your husband was behind half our operations," he said slowly, like she was hard of hearing. "The banks knew it, the auditors knew it, the deals reflected it. You didn't." There was a murmur. Someone exhaled. She turned to her father, but he wouldn't look at her. "I wasn't aware of the extent—" "You weren't aware," Collins barked. "You signed the damn authorizations. You initialed every clause that gave him control. Were you just winging it?" "I trusted him," she shot back. "He was my husband." "And that made him invisible?" The silence afterward was heavy, suffocating. Elise stood there, surrounded by men who used to defer to her, now staring with expressions ranging from doubt to disgust. Her power wasn't gone in one stroke. It was being peeled off her inch by inch, like old paint on wet concrete. She turned back to her father, hoping for some kind of anchor, but he only said one thing: "Fix it, or don't come back tomorrow." And just like that, Elise, CEO, keynote speaker, Forbes feature, stood powerless in a room she used to command. The walls hadn't moved, but somehow she was no longer tall enough to reach the light switch. The boardroom wasn't grand, just beige, sterile, functional. No sweeping views or marble-topped bravado like Elise preferred. Aaron had chosen it deliberately, a neutral downtown tower with just enough anonymity to remind the people sitting across from him that this wasn't their turf anymore. Across the table sat Martin, the father-in-law who once called Aaron harmless, as if that were a compliment, and two senior partners whose faces sagged under the weight of collapsing leverage. They looked like men who'd spent the weekend chewing aspirin and praying to gods they didn't believe in. Aaron didn't bring a lawyer or a team, just a file folder, one black pen, and the kind of calm that unnerves powerful people. Martin leaned forward, fists clenched. Let's not waste time. We've drafted a restructuring proposal. You reinstate partial guarantees, we roll over the revolving credit, and you walk with equity in the new shell. Aaron nodded slowly, as if appreciating a child's attempt at building a house out of sugar cubes. That would have been a good offer. Last Tuesday. Martin's jaw twitched. You're joking. Aaron opened the folder. I already moved my interest to a different fund. Kestrel Group divested Friday afternoon. All holdings tied to your family entities have been zeroed. One of the partners choked on air. You moved everything? Not everything, Aaron said. Just the parts holding you upright. Martin's voice dropped an octave. You're cutting us out. Aaron didn't flinch. No, Martin. You cut me out. The day you let her laugh at me in your boardroom in front of your partners, called me her domestic CFO. She was joking. Aaron raised an eyebrow. Right, like when she said I didn't have a real job in front of your auditors. Or when she offered me a stipend increase for vacuuming, that was a good one. Martin looked away. The other two partners were stone still. Aaron continued, voice even. You want the truth? I gave you 4 years of unpaid infrastructure. Compliance sweeps, forensic audits, ghost negotiations with 3 offshore vendors, work that your $900 an hour consultants missed. All I asked was to be treated like a partner. And you decided revenge was cleaner? Aaron leaned back. Not revenge. Correction. You built a castle on soft ground and mocked the guy who was shoring up the foundation. I just walked out the door. Gravity did the rest. Martin slammed a palm on the table. This is personal. Of course it is, Aaron said. You brought me in like family, then treated me like a spare appliance. I stopped being part of the machine, and now the wheels don't turn. The room stayed quiet long enough for the air conditioning to sound like a whisper. One of the partners finally cleared his throat. Aaron, we can work this out. There's still time to salvage. Aaron cut him off with a polite smile. I'm not here to salvage. I'm here to document the end. He slid a second folder across the table. These are the finalized divestment letters. Everything's compliant, clean. I've even offered referrals to 2 firms who specialize in restructuring. They'll do what I used to, only slower and far more expensive. Martin didn't touch the folder. Aaron stood. This was never about money. It was about being seen. She couldn't see me, and you didn't want to. He paused at the door, turned once. Oh, and about that yacht? I donated it, tax write-off, Coast Guard Foundation. They're going to use it for maritime training. Seems more useful than Instagram. He didn't wait for a reaction. He walked out. Alone. No Elise. No farewell speech. No poetic full circle moment. Just the sound of control shifting, quietly, completely, to him. The ballroom was intentionally intimate. Mahogany walls, dim amber lighting, and soft jazz murmuring through hidden speakers. Not flashy, just quietly expensive. It was the kind of room that didn't need to prove itself. Everyone inside had already been proven, or more accurately, vetted. Aaron stood near the back as the event coordinator adjusted the mic on stage. He didn't mingle. He didn't wear a name tag. But heads still turned, one by one, not with shock, but recognition, respect. Quiet nods from people who used to overlook him entirely. The night's main event was the award, Strategic Architect of the Year. Not publicized, not live streamed. Just a plaque given behind closed doors by people who understood what that title actually meant. He hadn't asked for it, didn't lobby, didn't even know until 3 days before when the invitation arrived. Unmarked envelope, no return address, just a gold crest and a time. He nearly tossed it, but curiosity, that old friend showed up. The host took the mic. This year's recipient has been called a ghost analyst, a systems whisperer, and my favorite, the guy who quietly removed the load-bearing wall just to prove a point. The room chuckled warmly. Aaron didn't. Please welcome the man behind 3 of the most quietly efficient takeovers in the past fiscal year, Aaron Windsor. polite applause. Subtle, respectful. Aaron walked to the stage with a stillness that made people lean in. He took the plaque with a single nod, no flourish, no handshake longer than necessary. He stepped to the mic, paused, then spoke. You never know who's holding the foundation up until they let go. That was it. No thank yous, no speeches, no mentions of Elise. He didn't need to. He stepped back. In the very rear of the room, tucked in the shadow of a support pillar, stood Elise. Alone. No entourage. No heels sharp enough to announce her. No camera flashes. Just her, wearing a navy dress that suddenly looked too expensive for a place she no longer belonged. No one acknowledged her. No one even glanced her way. When Aaron left the stage, the applause followed him. People stood, slowly, not in the eager performative way, just a quiet rising like gravity itself had shifted. He walked past her without stopping. No eye contact, no cruel smirk, no dramatic pause, just silence. And as the doors closed behind him, the crowd trickled out, toward him, not her. Elise stayed standing, eyes fixed on the stage he'd just left. A plaque, a name, a single sentence echoing in her head. You never know who's holding the foundation up until they let go. She looked around for someone, anyone. To catch her eye, no one did. She wasn't feared, she wasn't hated, she was irrelevant. And in the quiet that followed, Elise understood what Aaron had really taken from her. Not assets, not equity, but the spotlight, and the silence it left in its place was absolute.